Hello class, my name is Caleb Carr and I'm back again with another super awesome tutorial about how to use photo adjustment layers. So instead of just editing your things constantly and then flattening layers and isolating layers like I used to, this ends up being a really neat technique because then I can roll back my constant mistakes when I'm in the process of making some kind of piece of art. So as an example, I chose this one off of a website about caterpillars because it's got all these little fibrous elements to show you how these textures actually work. So if you zoom in, you wouldn't really want to see that there's there's a lot of pixelation going on here already because it's not the most high quality image. So when I'm editing this, if I was to start to actually edit the pixels themselves, the actual image quality would just drop lower and lower. So by continually editing layers over top of my original image, I can continue to tweak the image without doing any damage to the actual quality of it. So to get started, we're actually going to be using mostly, so you can access the image adjustments drop down up here at the top. Gives you pretty much every option that we're going to be using today, but also looking at this little half semicircle down here at the bottom is going to present to you the same number of features. So number one, we're going to be looking at levels. So we'll be doing a image adjustment layer, which will show us the RGB color spread from white to black and where our tones fall in this image. So by sliding it over to the left, we're letting the more of the white saturate the image. By moving over the other direction, we're letting more of the blacks saturate the image. Essentially, we are changing the gradient and the mean in between to give us more of a sharpness to it. This is a little bit different than contrast. We are actually adjusting the number of pixels at each given layer, and in this case, we're condensing them. So now some of our blackest blacks are creeping into our whites, so the image itself gets darker. So looking at the original image, like bringing out some of the contrast of this image a little bit better, so we're going to leave that as an additional layer. The second one we're going to look at too is invert. So invert is pretty much as simple as it gets, but everyone knows that you can use this to make a photo negative of the image. And in this case, I wasn't going to do it originally because I feel like you're so far removed from what the original image was. But I like that it really highlights all the little fibers. So if this were a textbook perhaps, and I wanted to talk about the kind of fibers on the actual caterpillar, I would want to maybe make an image like this. I mean, negatives are not used very often except for dramatic effect movies or in this case research purposes, but I feel like this kind of fits an ongoing theme of maybe this is a botanical research project and we're talking about invasive caterpillars. So that's kind of where I'm going with. This is a textbook image. It's a textbook thing. It's for school. So the next one we want to examine here too is curves. So curves are allowing us to also again look at the color content that we have in here. And in this case, we're setting sort of an array of the colors that can be displayed in the image from whites to dark. And as we slide this bar around too, it's adjusting the quality of the colors contained inside the image. So in this case, I kind of like this filter here to bring out my whites again because I did sort of wash it out by decreasing the number of whites that I had. So again, we're doing that a second time, but we're decreasing the level of the whites that are contained in the image so that we get a different kind of effect and bring out more of the shadows around the actual hair fibers themselves. That combined with the photo negative and then the sharpness from doing our black level adjustment, you're starting to see all of the little anatomical details of the caterpillar, but it's still kind of blurred out too. So what we're going to be doing here then too is using a photo filter palette. This will be our fourth technique here. So with this filter, we can use this to sort of bring some of the other colors forward. It has a drop down, different options on the kinds of tones we can bring out. And right now these blues are starting to sort of overpower some of the detail that I had over here too. So we're going to look for something that sort of contrasts that. And it's got a variety of different filters that are built into it already. I sort of just like this original warming filter to sort of clear up the image. And you can adjust the density a little bit lighter just to give it a little bit more sharpness as we're looking at just the little details around the caterpillar itself. So hiding this layer and the inversion for now, we're going to be looking at a different tool, which will be image. And so our sixth technique here, we're going to be looking at some of the variations that can be applied to this image. So we'll go to our image and adjustments, what I actually want to do here, just looking at our original image here, adjustment. So what we want to do here too is that, as we talked about having problems with there being too much blue in the image, and we'll go back to some of our other photo filters that we had applied to it, I want to actually go to our color balance wheel, and we see that we have a little bit too much on the blue side of things, so we'll slide that bar over to bring out some of the other colors here too. So here, even though now this is kind of a sickly looking image, some of these blues that were here in this area of the photo are now sort of fading into the back. Even the colors that were on the caterpillar itself are starting to bring themselves back, and now all of that yellow that was that gold detailing all on the inside of the actual image is starting to pop back out. So now we can see a lot more of it. As a seventh technique, we're going to be looking at the hue and saturation. Saturation is the amount of color that is in the image, and so by reducing this, we get less of this blurriness that we had going on here. You notice how splotchy it's getting around the other corners of the image, but by reducing it just slightly enough, now we're starting to just see the anatomical details of the caterpillar that we wanted to see initially here too. And so that brings us up to 6 techniques. Our 7th technique will be the levels, which, sorry, no, we did the levels already. What I actually want to do here is, let's use the selective color tool to help choose some of just the blues that are in here and adjust the levels of the blues that are contained inside of the image. Again, further reducing the actual content inside of the image. And for our very last technique, and I'm not going to use this as a final one, but you can use this black and white image layer to completely wash it out. Now, of course, we spent all this time actually working on the image itself, but this is the beauty of using adjustment layers, is that now to go back from my black and white adjustment, I didn't edit the actual pixels. I can just simply choose not to view this layer right here too. So that's 8 different techniques that you can be using. So we're gonna do a little bonus here actually at the end. So in addition to our different techniques that we have here too, we can use rasterization of the image layer here. So obviously when we did this black and white layer, it sort of ruined all the other layers that we had added on to this image. So what I'm going to do instead, actually, and just kind of show you this technique, is that I'm going to instead use a color gradient so that we can just see what it would look like if it were black and white. So what we're doing here instead is we're going to go to monochrome, change the angle of it too, so we get our whites to blacks. Go ahead and do it this way. Set that behavior to be done based on the difference. So now you don't really quite get exactly what you're looking for too, but you can make gradients behave with the actual image as a different layer. And then again, just being an adjustment layer, we can quickly get rid of it and go back to it. So you actually end up with, because we did a photo negative, it'll go back from the old image to this new messier image. Now that seems kind of weird, but it's an interesting technique to think about. So if you use the difference to do a negative of something that's already negative, you can actually have it revert to the original image on one side and then have the older image on the other side, but with an actual gradient transition between the two, which is sort of a unique technique. I appreciate what it does because it gives you a nice transition between the images instead of just cutting out part of the layer, so you could just do an exclusion on part of the layer and then end up with a hard cut in between the two. But because we've done a negative and then done negative again, you can have it negative on one side and positive on the other, and then have like a nice transition between them using that gradient layer. So that's my 9th little bonus technique and putting it on the end. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. You'll have the link to the actual original image and the Caterpillar website. If you like caterpillars, you can find out a little bit more about it in my actual submission. So thank you all for watching.